All right, welcome back to the Joey Geoff podcast.
Let's go.
And today we're here with Jesse Michels. We're going to talk conspiracies.
Let's go. Let's get into it.
I mean, what brought you into town? I know that Founders Fund put together this Hereticon.
Yep. Yeah, Michael Solana, Founders Fund, threw this amazing conference called Hereticon. And I was lucky enough to kind of host a couple of talks with some very interesting people. And so that was the impetus for coming out, along with hanging out with you, Geoff.
Yeah.
And you, Joey. No, this kind of actually happened very serendipitously.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of brought me in, and yeah, pumped to be here. Miami's awesome. It's cool. Every time I'm here, I'm like, it's like a pretty good vibe and fun.
It's great in spots where like everyone's here. It's super great weather, good venues. No, but I just want to just go back to some history. I mean, like we've known each other for quite some time. I know you're an OG friend of Jake's.
Yeah.
And a lot of actual business overlap, but on a personal note, I think you're actually my favorite content creator. American Alchemy.
Thank you, Jeff.
I think just straight up, you're like breaking news on all the alien stuff, all the conspiracy stuff. I know you run BS with Jake Paul as well.
Yep.
So want to just take this opportunity to just go super deep in all the conspiracy, but also on the business side. I know you're a very active venture capitalist.
Yep.
All of that stuff. So
Let's
lot
do
to
it.
dig in.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm ready. Let's do it. Yeah, and I appreciate that a lot because, yeah, I feel like it's funny. Like YouTube sometimes feels like a poor like medium for what I'm doing because like you need to like play the game with the thumbnails, like the Mr. Beast style thumbnails and titles or whatever. But like it's a lot of what I feel like I'm doing is like breaking these like important narratives when it comes to like American history and like peeling back the layers on that. And then I think also like ontological truth with the alien stuff. It's like, what is this, the reality that we're swimming in? And we were talking earlier, Joey, like, I don't think it's for everybody. You know, I don't think everybody should be like, you know, going straight at the truth or whatever. People have bills to pay, businesses to run, families, all that stuff. But there is definitely a certain subset of society that they're just like kind of hardcore truth seekers. And so I think I speak to a lot of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just on a personal note, I remember when we were in Puerto Rico at Jake's house.
That was a great day. I remember.
And I think like spending time with with the group here, I felt like I think Jake is very much about manifesting and essentially like creating a reality around himself, right? And if you look at his track record, like he says outlandish things and but he truly believes and he almost manifests it.
100%.
And I think we were talking about, okay, how do you explain this from a scientific perspective? You were like digging into research where if you could, you know, the observer of quantum effects, if you can actually like channel the probabilities in a certain direction.
Yes.
Like how'd you get into all this stuff? Like what made you go from, if I recall correctly, you were a Google employee, right? And you started investing and now essentially like a breaking news on aliens and conspiracies.
I never thought my life would go in this direction. Yeah, I was at Google and like had a pretty conventional, like, I don't know, like tech conventionally successful, but like not, I don't know, like I was a program manager in AI at Google. And before that, I studied history at Columbia. And I was honestly on this kind of generic, like...
Columbia guy here, too.
Yeah, I know we talked about
also
it.
a history major.
Yeah, we talked, and we almost
what was your
matched up on
specialty?
everything. Remember, it was American for both of us?
Yeah.
And then you were 19th century, and I was 20.
Right. That's what it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
so
almost got
almost
all-
exactly
yeah.
the same.
Yeah, could be brothers.
I mean, I also went down a pretty different path, too, right?
Yeah, then history, are you kidding?
Yeah, sports gambling's a little bit different.
But you dropped out after 2 years, right?
I did.
And you did the Teal Fellowship?
I did.
It's pretty epic.
Yeah.
I wish I had done that. Like I feel like you like short circuited or preempted. Like I should have done that. I think I stayed in the like linear system for too long.
I think part of the reason why it worked out that way for me though was because like FanDuel and DraftKings started really like pioneering the category around the time I started college.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like it was almost like the market pulled me in the direction that I went in. Whereas I don't know if there was like a moment for you with respect to like some of the I don't know, like the alien related things. like was there like one thing that just like caught your attention that like put you down this rabbit hole while you were at Google at some other point?
Way later, like post working for Peter, honestly.
Yeah.
So and I want to hear more about your path too, but part of the job for Peter, so like initially it was investing, but also kind of sourcing interesting thinkers for the office and stuff, and we'd meet and have these curiosity conversations. There are a couple people who pioneered this. Actually, I should kind of pay homage to this Hollywood producer named Brian Grazer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
No.
Produced like 8 Mile and Apollo 13, and like he's just like Ron Howard's production partner. And he did this thing where like every 2 weeks he would meet with a new incredibly interesting person. So like Edward Teller, the creator of the H-bomb, and then the next 2 weeks or whatever would be like MBS. Like, say what you will about the guy, but like it's just like interesting people from all walks of life, right? And so I sort of did. I had a similar kind of role in the office where I was like bringing in interesting thinkers, but then also companies to invest in, and that was like a re-education for me. It like intellectually just like blasted my like all these like prior things that I thought like this kind of the prison of the mind. It blasted it open, and I started to realize there are like all these like other possibilities. And
a lot different than Columbia's
and
what they teach you there.
That's funny, man, because like I would read like Plato's Republic and all these things, and I'd be like, what the this is bullshit. Like what is this gonna do for me, right?
Yeah.
And then now I'm like so into Plato, but like from this like mystical like I think he like had better bearing on reality than anybody.
Yeah.
And so it's this interesting thing where like it's taught to you, like Nietzsche wrote this essay called On History, and it's like this big like tearing apart academia. And he used the word or term undigested stones of knowledge to describe like how academia kind of like, it's just like you want to learn a thing so you can sound cool at a fucking cocktail party.
Yeah.
It's like so you can
You're
like
doing it for the wrong reasons.
The wrong reasons.
I've always kind of felt like, as somebody who dropped out of school, did the Teal Fellowship, all that, I'm like, I kind of wish I could like go back and read the core curriculum literature again, but like later in my life after I have like more lived experience, and I like go into it with the mindset of like I really like want to absorb the material and like
100%.
draw it back to some things that I like know a little bit, but like what the fuck do you know as like an 18-year-old kid like going into that, and it's like they're requiring you to absorb the literature at a rate that's like it's just like.
It's why people who take gap years are, I feel like, often super motivated. Like they know they're not at college because it's the default option. They're there because like they want to learn a specific thing.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I think college should be optional, and it should be at any point in life.
Yeah.
You should just, because then you go in and you're like fired up to be there to like learn a specific thing. Or even like, other core curriculum like, the Iliad or something, right? Like that was like the Peloponnesian War was like a totally mythical thing. Homer, Thucydides, whatever.
Thucydides,
and like late 19th century, this guy Heinrich Schliemann was this like German businessman, and he like found the ancient site of Troy. And like I love that like as like a model for some of the stuff I'm doing now, where it's like you don't have to be like an expert in the thing, and you can be motivated by mythology. Like you can be motivated by a thing that like scholars, like they call it like fake or whatever, like Plato's fake, all these things, just like myth that like molds society, but none of these things were like ontologically true, and you can't actually excavate them from the past. And I would just disagree with that. And I think we're the age of like credentialed experts is kind of ending.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I know you're like incredibly smart and went through the system, and like, and you're kind of like a contrarian and badass, and like we talked earlier, you make some very interesting trades like early as well. But like, I don't know, like Joey, you're like, you dropping out is like a good model for the future. I just hope like people like both you guys just drop out as early as possible.
No, college isn't necessary.
It's not necessary.
It's not necessary. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. And it's going downhill. It used to be something. It used to be so much better, I think.
But I think the skills and the raw IQ it takes to get those qualifications are like the table stakes to have the wherewithal to be playing with like more cutting edge ideas, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's almost like a selector of IQ, ambition, discipline, but it doesn't create you, right? Like you guys would be successful no matter what.
I tweeted this a few years ago. I think he said something like, he's going to tell his kids try to get into Stanford and then leave after like a day.
Yeah,
I love that.
You like demonstrated that you're like good at the SAT and you're capable of getting in, but like you don't have to stay for much longer.
And you
benefit from the credential. Like using myself as an example, like when I started my first startup, people like assumed I was smart because I went to Columbia. They didn't care that I didn't like graduate. If anything, it was like even more credibility that I like left.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, they're like, you got in, and you know, you chose to be
So I think that's where my nuance is, right? Like, I don't want people to be like, oh, that means Jesse and Joey telling me don't study. It's like, no, you got to be like smart and like study.
Yeah.
But the qualifications don't make you successful. 100%. It's actually being smart that makes you successful.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think the history of universities in the U.S. is really interesting because in a way it's like really positive, right? You had like Joey and I, all three of us probably couldn't have gone to like Ivy League schools pre like 1965. It was like all WASPs, right?
Right.
And I think in 1965, you had Kingman Brewster, who was the Yale president, kind of popularized the term meritocracy, and he starts to kind of open up, you know, the floodgates really, as far as, you know, like just anybody who's like qualified should like get into, you know, elite universities, which is a great thing. That's amazing. But then you have like U.S. News and World Report, which comes out with its rankings. And you have these kind of like game theory dynamics where the competition grows so much for elite education, and the competition vis-a-vis the schools grows so much in terms of like signaling how good they are. But the capacity doesn't grow. Like the space at these schools doesn't grow. So they become extremely selective. You have like, you know, 5, 6, 7% acceptance rates. Yep. And you have to have like founded 8 foundations in Africa and like play clarinet and, you know, do all these things. And they're kind of just to signal that you're like an overachiever. Yeah. Like you're just jumping through hoops. And then you get to school and you're surrounded by these like overachievement peers. And they're all like, oh, I really just want to get an internship at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or what, you know, whatever. And you're just so trained to like be this like high frequency trader, like get to that next level before the next person, that it's a brain drain in my opinion. Like people who are incredibly smart who could forge unique paths like you guys have are like stuck in these just tracks. And usually it ends badly. Usually it's like you wake up and you're like 40 or 50. You've probably made some good money, but you're like, damn, like what did I do?
You're like a random investment banker. You're just like, yeah. I feel like we could talk so much about academia, which I think is of interest, but I want to go into aliens and conspiracies. I mean, I think it's like, so maybe just to kick that off.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's like, I'm actually just curious. Like you're breaking news of like all the people that are testifying in Congress. Like you're spending like real time with these guys behind the scenes. I'm sure they're telling you things that maybe are not publicly disclosed yet. Like is like intelligence, like do you feel like CIA is tracking you?
Maybe. Yeah. Yes, I'm on somebody's radar for sure.
Like you gotta be, right?
Yeah, 100%. There's no way I'm not. Yeah. Yeah. I think like what I constantly try to do is like signal that I am patriotic. I'm very pro-America and I care about my life. And
does it change your behavior? So, like are you no, I'm actually curious. Like are you like making sure you're not like texting or doing phone calls? And
I'm pretty good about like OPSEC, you know, I'm pretty good about like, okay, like this is probably not good to communicate digitally or whatever. And then like, yeah, use the proper kind of channels. But like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, you never know where the line is, you know, when you're kind of reporting on this stuff. And so that's why I always try to like make those like disclaimers. Like if anybody were to tell me like, hey, you're just disclosing a thing that like China or Russia is just going to take advantage of and like weaponize against us. I like studied American history. Like I care about this country. Yeah. And the reason I think I'm doing it is it feels like a patriotic duty. I think a lot of this stuff is like science, like bound up in secrecy. Science should not be classified. Science should be open source. Yep. And then ontological truth too. I think we live in this kind of nihilistic world. And if you can give people meaning in their everyday lives by like truth seeking, and then you can also give them like the proper scientific frameworks, that seems like a life well lived, like in service of those two things.
So maybe just to get on terms of like what is openly disclosed, right? Like there seems to be like meta materials that exist that like scientists that you like, have you seen these materials? There's like talks about like biological matter that people have seen or interacted with, of like alien, like non-human, non-Earth origin, like craft.
Never seen biological materials as far as like anomalous space, UFO materials. there is a microbiologist at Stanford, your alma mater, right?
Yeah.
Named Gary Nolan. He's a Nobel nominee every year. He's like incredibly well respected in his just general field of microbiology. Spun out a couple of 9-figure companies. Very, hard-headed, successful guy in his own right. He's obsessed with aliens. And there's this other guy, he's kind of the French godfather of UFOs. His name is Jacques Vallée. And he's actually the basis for the French scientist in Close Encounters of the Third Kind that Francois Truffaut plays. If you guys have ever seen that movie, Steven Spielberg movie, great movie. So Jacques is so famous as this UFO researcher that he publishes his address online, where if you find some crash parts, like you see a crazy thing crash in the sky, you'll mail it to Jacques. So he gets all these parts. And Jacques then goes to Gary, because Gary can do mass spectrometry on it and do actual material analysis on it. And with a few of these parts, Gary's like, they have isotope ratios that do not occur naturally on Earth.
Have you seen this material?
I've seen them. They're sort of small and anticlimactic, and so it's like
without a random little rock. You're just like, okay.
So it's like without the mass spec, I'm like, I don't know, but like, just combine his credentials with the fact that he's like probably not lying about the mass spec results.
Right.
And I can't say that it's like they're for sure UFO parts, but like extremely worthy of like further investigation, I'd say. And then as far as like the classified stuff, there's a guy named David Grush. He's a good buddy of mine who
he's like the main disclosure guy that if you've been following that news, he's like in Congress, all that stuff.
And I think he's like the tip of the spear as far as like knowledge on this stuff, because like a couple whistleblowers have come out, but like he's really gone the farthest, where he has like some pretty hardcore credentials, National Geospatial Agency, Air Force, dealt with presidential daily briefings, like was cleared to like some of the highest special access programs. And he came forward in summer of 23, and he was basically like, there have been covert UFO reverse engineering programs. They've been going on, actually since the 30s. And he brought forward 40 people who have worked on this stuff firsthand to the Intelligence Community Inspector General, over 1,000 pages or something of documentation of all of this stuff, including where the crafts are kept, where these UFOs are kept. And then he testified before Congress to this effect at the end of the summer, where if you were lying...
penalty of perjury, right?
Yeah, exactly. He'd go to jail. He'd go to jail. He'd torpedo his career. And so it's like, you have to ask yourself, these are like near-term falsifiable things, right? Like if nothing comes out in our lifetime, you can kind of not conclusively say, but like, like that looks bad on him, right? And so like he's really stuck his neck out. And so this will probably inflect in one way or the other like soon. And so I think it's a very exciting time to be alive, to be honest. Because I think it's amazing. And I know him really, closely on a personal level, to the degree where I'm like, I just don't think he's crazy. I think he's super legit. He has mild autism, and he's one of these people who just has like extreme attention to detail. Has trouble.
Watch Jesse's channel. Like you were spending like hours with him, multiple, like you basically have like documentary level vlogs, whatever you call these things, like just like multiple interactions. Like you're hiking with them, you're eating dinner with, like it's just like
stress testing everything, like asking everything you would ask, and like looking for like body language and tells, and it's like pretty kind of checks.
So like I think one of the hypotheses are okay, these are extraterrestrials, like aliens of the classic form. I think some of the other hypotheses you've explored are these future humans time traveling back. I think I'm curious on like just get asked for your actual opinion.
I think so.
What do you think this stuff is?
So few people in this topic look at it through a scientific lens. It's always this kind of religious meaning seeking, like everything is everything, kind of woo-woo mushy brain thinking. And so the alien thing is like in the zeitgeist. It has been, since like War of the Worlds and like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Like we've had media like pushing us towards this, like, these things come from another planet, like narrative, right? But if you were to just be like pure science mode, right? What are you seeing? So over 50% of a lot of, in many databases of accounts of people seeing these beings, they are hominid-like creatures. So they have, they're bipedal. They have 2 legs, 2 arms. Like they look very similar to humans. And if you think about it, the likelihood of evolutionary convergence on some random planet is extremely low, right? And so if you're seeing a thing and it's like in your neighborhood and it looks like you, it's probably related to you. That's the Occam's razor explanation. It's not that it's from like they're from like Zeta Reticuli. And then on top of that, for every account where they say they're from another planet, they say they're us from the future. And then there's often like, they discuss like gamete collection or genetic sampling collection to increase biodiversity from the future. Okay, so that's one layer. To get even deeper, if you were to talk to a random evolutionary biologist and be like, okay, what is human morphology like evolving into? Like what would a human look like in like 1,000 years? They would describe a gray alien, literally. Like, think about it. Our brains are being selected for, right? We live in this age of like infinite leverage, to quote Naval Ravikant, and so like, our cranial size will grow, that's a gray alien. Our ears and nose will shrink. We're not hunter-gathering anymore, right? Gray alien. Like, our eyes would become like slit-like because we're looking at screens all day long, like over and over again. The telepathy thing, like, I think we have latent, like, intuitive powers, and like those will be selected for like more and more, especially.
What explains the color?
What's that?
Just to be like gray. Like, why are we all gray?
A lot of speculation, but so we're becoming domesticated. You look at our, fertility is dropping off a cliff. Sperm count's dropping off a cliff. It's 59% of what it was per capita 50 years ago. It's like absurdly bad. Our testosterone's dropping off a cliff. Part of, so we are like a wolf is to a dog what we are to our future selves. One of the features of domestication is losing the melanin in your skin. So, gray alien. And then you could get into other
Makes
theories
sense.
like
kind of a depressing thought.
Kind of a depressing thought.
Yeah.
Another really more depressing thought is like, we're awfully on the brink of like some sort of nuclear thing, and like think about what we would look like in the case of some sort of nuclear calamity where the Earth's atmosphere would fundamentally change, right? Yep. So, God forbid. Let's hope that version of the future doesn't occur, but. I think if you look at this stuff scientifically, that it should really be your base case. And Steven Spielberg, who I think has some interesting sources on the inside, if you just look at like a lot of what he put out back in the day, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind was like, I don't know, from the 80s, or it was an early movie. And like he had like, I think it was like TRW and Skunk Works, which is like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed, like, which we now know are like, the programs that kind of dealt with this stuff or whatever. So he's like early on a lot of these things. And the creator of Deadpool is this guy, Robert Liefeld. And I guess he's friends with Steven Spielberg. And Liefeld recently tweeted, I was in a private conversation with Steven Spielberg, who knows all about the UFO stuff. And he said to me, like, what do you think, dummy? You think these are, random aliens from another planet? Or do you think they're us from the future guarding ourselves, in the present to ensure the sustenance of certain timelines or whatever? So I think
is that your leading hypothesis?
That's my leading hypothesis.
If you're forced to say like, hey, what do you think this stuff is?
Leading hypothesis, because it's also, they show up around nuclear sites constantly. That's like the repeatable pattern.
What is your sense on what government thinks that this is?
I think
that the monolith government,
yeah,
but you're interacting with.
To me, it's
entities.
A little bit like the smartest theorists inside the government who I've met are on this side, I think. I mean, it's sort of a false dichotomy, right? Because to get to true space travel, so if you look at like what Elon's doing with chemical combustion, it'll take 80,000 plus years to get to Proxima Centauri, like with like Falcon 9 or something, theoretically, which a Falcon 9 wouldn't have enough fuel, but like what I'm saying. Yeah. And then if you do nuclear thermal propulsion, which is like one step up, as far as propulsion. That would 2x that. So it's like 40,000 years. So it's like completely unrealistic, like one human lifespan. You would need some sort of space-time metric engineering. Like you'd need to break Einstein's speed limit. And so you'd need to have some sort of time travel capability to get to these actually like habitable solar systems, right?
Gravity manipulation.
Yeah. So like it's kind of this false dichotomy where like maybe they emanate from Earth and are sort of related to us, but maybe they also have inhabited other stars or something, and then they can also come back in time, because if time travel is future at any point in the future, it's inherently always been true in the past. Think about that. Yep. Like it's this inherent. It's not even a paradox. It's just like an axiomatic truth. So
I mean, I think the passing is interesting because I think I like the content because you tie in so much of like the like the Graham Hancock, so like all of the prehistoric stuff. That's also very interesting, right? Like where in the Bible they talk about like basically describing aliens. All these ancient tribes have these mythologies around like these visitors.
Totally. There's so many. I mean, look at like you have Sumerian artifacts that show a heliocentric universe, and like 17th century Galileo got burnt at the stake, like really in trouble with the Vatican for saying we live in a heliocentric universe. And then you have all sorts of really precociously like built, like basically astronomically aligned architecture, where it's like, how did they know this stuff? Like how did the pyramids line up with Orion's belt like perfectly? And you have, honestly, architecture all over the world like this. And I think that's the tip of the spear on archaeology, and it's starting to shift now. Graham Hancock has this massive Netflix show that's really gaining in popularity, to the point where like younger archaeologists are like more likely to follow him than like the like midwit detractor of him. And he's relatively like these uncoverings are like relatively new, right? Like this is like 20, 30 years. Archaeology as a field is 200 years old. Like early 1800s was, finding like Babylonia, Syria, like some of the early cities. And it's kind of like you have like Moore's law and like semiconductors, right? It's like you have a similar law with archaeology, where it's like the further you go, the older civilization gets. So like he found Göbekli Tepe, which was, I think, dates to like, 9,000-ish BC or something, which is well before like, we thought it was just hunter-gatherers. Exactly. Yeah. Like Mesopotamia is supposedly the cradle of civilization. Like actually, like
these other things.
Like
6,000
BC. Exactly. Yeah. So like I think it's actually a safe bet to be like it's gonna probably be older than that, like pretty soon.
And it is interesting because like Homo sapiens was like a 250,000-year-old history, and it's just like what changed from 250K years ago to like 6,000 years ago, right? It's just like I don't know.
No, it's a great question.
It's a good question
because it's like why we've been physiologically, biologically, consciously the same entities for the last 250,000 years. Similar enough, yeah. So it's like, well, physiologically, like kind of similar, right? Yeah. So it's like, why do we have culture, high tech, like everything we have now in just the last 3 to 5% of our existence? You could explain that away with some like Ray Kurzweil style graph, where it's like things just go parabolic at the end or whatever, like Steven Pinker. It's just the way it works. Or you could be like, if there was a calamity like back in the day, like an asteroid hit the Earth, which is like not only possible, it's probable, given that this thing called the Taurid meteor stream passes by the Earth twice a year and it contains all sorts of like gnarly comets, then you wouldn't necessarily know after that many years have passed. Like a civilization could have been, completely buried. Like right now we're lidaring the Amazonian forest and finding all sorts of topology, like geoglyphs and stuff, and then going down there and finding lost cities and civilizations. So like, why wouldn't that continue to happen? Like the Amazon Sahara Desert underwater, there's, stuff, post-calamity, flooding and that sort of thing. I think there's like so much more to discover as far as our
So what do you think the pyramids are?
Now we're getting to crazy territory.
No, let's go.
I have no idea, but like, okay, they're like ancient kind of celestial like ascent practice. Like I think it have to do with the afterlife, and because they seem to line up with Orion's belt. Orion's belt was always in all tradition, like in Aztec traditions, Sumerian tradition, like traditions across the ancient world. This was the place that souls would ascend through. You can even read Ptolemy as late as 100 AD, and he's like the beginning of astronomy or whatever. And he's like the soul goes through Orion's belt, right? And so I think it had something to do with like a funerary practice where like that's where you'd go into the kind of the afterlife. It was like a portal.
Because like, I don't know. I think this is on your content. Like he's like talking about the Ark of the Covenant, which is like where like the Moses tablets were, and he's like he thinks he found them
in Axum in Ethiopia. Yeah, it's
like you believe it? Like I was like actually reading into it. They're like like they're never like why like. These things are there. Yeah. They can be uncovered. Like you can dig these things up, right?
Yeah.
If Ark of the Covenant was in Ethiopia,
like
why don't we just
get in there?
Get in there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the weird thing. So the Ark of the Covenant, biblically in the Old Testament, and by the way, I'm not high conviction that it is there personally, but it could. The reason that it could be. I mean, this is really interesting. Like in Axum, Ethiopia, you have these guards around this chamber that they claim the Ark of the Covenant is in. And the guards all have cataracts where their eyes sort of blaze over and it feels like they're exposed to high electromagnetic radiation. They die early as well. And that is, if you look at the biblical kind of description of the Ark of the Covenant, it's like this electromagnetic, like kind of thunderstorm generator thing that like shows the Israelites where to go in the desert.
The Philistines
and stuff.
like caught it and they all blew up or something.
Yeah,
like some weird mythologies like that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you like.
Haven't dug into it.
You gotta read
Come on,
read your
Joey.
books.
I'm just sitting here like learning. Man. This is maybe the most amount of time I've spent on this topic. It's crazy.
Probably all that's necessary.
No. I'm gonna dive. I mean, yeah, I don't have a lot of time to dive into it. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and so Graham Hancock, and he saw these things. He saw, you know, the guardsmen and their eyes, and like, you know, he was like, you know, maybe there is like actually a real thing there. And I guess there was the Italian occupation of Ethiopia, and they claimed they like hid it somewhere when the Italians came. So I have no idea. And the reason it possibly like a deterrent for like, you know, getting in there and like actually figuring out whether it's real or not, you know, the final myth around the Ark of the Covenant is it's the holiest of the holies. And if you are not of complete like purity, you die instantly. And so, and then you have these guards where they're like, they come out and their like faces are burned or whatever. And so it's like, I could see like real fear as far as like going in there. But like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
Like there probably are, you know, after Graham Hancock has like popularized this among, you know, lots of people, maybe there's some
to me, it's
dumb
like
person.
Well, I think if this thing exists and it's so powerful, it's just like, all right, some people, like some government, there's too much, just even from like capitalism profit motive.
Right.
Like we should just like go rob this thing.
Don't say that. I don't think we should. I don't know. I feel like, what if it's real, dude?
Then someone would find out, right? Like we should find out.
I know, but then it's like, but maybe it's like really powerful. Like maybe it's like this really, you know, really important thing. Like if it's the actual Ark of the Covenant, then it's like this really foundational thing. You have the 10 Commandments, and so I don't know. I don't know what the right answer. Yeah, maybe we should find out, but maybe we should find the most pure person in the world. Who would that be in your guys' opinion? Who do we send in there? Should we send Jake into the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah, it sounds like he might die. Can't lose him just yet.
Jake would get zapped, but you know what? Modern Jake would get not as zapped as old Jake. Modern Jake is a beautiful. I mean, he's always been a beautiful soul, but I feel like I'm so proud of the person he's become.
100%.
Yeah, so he get less zapped. He might like come out like, you know, a little mangled, but like.
Yeah, I don't think I would volunteer myself, but someone should.
What's that?
I don't think I'd volunteer myself to take that risk, but it's too interesting to not actually. We should dig in.
We talk totally. I agree. I also don't feel ready, but we need somebody who's like, we have to find the.
Don't you feel like there's like some paramilitary contracting company? It's like, all right.
They just like a
here's like I'll give you $10 million bounty. Just get in there, put it on GoPros, figure this shit out.
I think where I have all these reservations around this stuff is like I've, you know, like fuck around and find out. Like with the UFO topic, I've gone kind of like guns blazing, gung ho into like some of these like sketchy areas. And like I've gotten burned in like little spots to the point where like I have extreme like reverence around this stuff where I'm like.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'll explain.
No, like I'm just curious. Like
So there was.
I'm like a consumer of entertainment. So like I'm just like watching this. I'm like, yo, this is like, I'm bored at night.
Totally.
Like, I'm just learning.
Well, that's why it's funny. I just did this talk with Diana Pasolka, this like religious studies professor, and this Army colonel named Carl Nell, and like the kind of thrust of the talk was like. This isn't intellectual entertainment. It's like extremely true, and like the phenomena will kind of have its way with you whether you like it or not. And it's like extremely like it's a very like powerful thing. And so like I'll give you a couple of examples like just to bring it to light. So like the UFO program that everybody talks about as like proof that like UFOs are real or whatever is this Harry Reid, who's a Senate Majority Floor Leader, you know, from Nevada, Democrat. He sponsored this UFO study group. And they went out to Skinwalker Ranch, which is this like paranormal hotspot in Utah. There's actually a show around it right now. And they were studying UFOs and kind of weird anomalous phenomena there. But they were studying it kind of from like a military perspective and like weaponry perspective. all of these guys who are like extremely high level scientists with like deep clearances have come out being like, we experience quote unquote the hitchhiker effect, like weird stuff kind of following them around into their homes, like kind of tormenting their families in many cases. And so they've all like experienced like, and apparently when you dig on Skinwalker Ranch, bad things happen to you. And so like that's just one.
What was the stuff following them around?
Like orbs and stuff, like good flying
like
around.
They'd physically see it. They'd feel like vibrations.
They'd see it. They'd feel it, and they'd feel like a little haunted. And
did any of them take like a picture of it or?
Yeah, of the hitchhiker.
Yeah, like
itself.
what was following them. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen something around that. Yeah, and then in many cases, what's that?
Have you personally?
So this is a good example. Yeah. Actually, I went to Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. And like I knew a lot of these guys were like pretty hardcore guys, and like I respected them a lot, and they were like, pray before you go. And so like I knew going in like, okay, like I have to take this really seriously, but I came in like, you kind of half believe this stuff. Yeah, like I came in being like, I think I'm gonna be fine, right? And so I like
that would be my approach probably.
So we like let's
just check out this
ranch.
It'll
be all good. So I go in like, I think it's it's all it's this like really cool like mesa in Utah. It's the Uinta Basin or whatever. It's beautiful. Brandon Fugels is the owner. He's this like real estate mogul out there. He's like really nice guy, like having a great time or whatever. We walk around the grounds. I'm like, this is awesome. This thing called a tri-field meter, which measures magnetic radiation, that goes off. And so like this is like little anomaly, and you're like, oh, okay, it's like geological like radiation. Like I don't know, like I don't know what could be causing this. Like probably nothing paranormal. We're walking around at the very end, and I catch this on camera because I did this for the show. My videographer, awesome 23-year-old kid's like filming me, and I'm just like off to the side, and I'm like, I think I smell sulfur, and like he's like, oh shit, that's kind of sketchy. And we're with the like groundskeeper there, this guy Thomas Winterton, who like himself actually was hospitalized. A lot of people on the ranch have been like felt really weird, been hospitalized. Like there are all sorts of biological effects. And so I tell him, I'm like, dude, I smelled sulfur, and he's like, oh, well, let us see. Like we have to see if there's like sulfur can be toxic. Yeah. So he's like, we have these sulfur detectors. Let's see like if there's any out there. And they were using the sulfur detectors. Like we don't detect any sulfur, and he's like, that might be an interesting sign, as far as like that might be like a not so great sign, because sulfur is actually the sign of the devil, and I swear to God, and like biblically, Yeah. And so like I think nothing of it at the time. In fact, I didn't even remember it until I saw it play back on video. What I do remember is the day I get back having like a horrible month after Skinwalker Ranch, like anomalously bad thing after anomalously bad thing happening every day in my life. I never experienced anything explicitly paranormal, like no orbs, not but it was like, if I took you through every day, you'd be like, that seems like higher or lower than chance, like like that's
like that wasn't a coincidence.
Yeah. So I don't know, but enough things have happened like that, or you meet certain people who are like into this topic for the wrong reasons, like in the world of like the quote unquote esoteric, you have the left-hand path of like, they're into it for like power or gain, or like it's just this like Faustian thing. You feel it on certain people where it's like, it's kind of bad vibes. And so I really try to like, I kind of like try to walk the straight and narrow, and like with certain things, like I have way more reverence now with things like the Ark of the Covenant. Like 3 years ago, I was like, I'll fucking go in there, and now I don't know, man. Like I think it's good to have some reverence for some of this stuff.
Down to go. Skinwalker.
You guys want to go?
I don't know, man.
I'll go. I would go.
Yeah.
Okay, at your own peril. I tell everybody, I'm like, just like.
But why would the phenomenon care of your intent? Like, so you think they're like it's beyond physics in some like the material. This thing cares about your intention.
I think so. I think it's. I mean, this is where we're getting into like really speculative territory, but like, and I don't have proof of this, but like, I think this like inner outer dichotomy, this like Cartesian dualist world that we live in, where like you have your mind and like that's just this like happy accident of physics, and then you have the material world, and like there's no like interaction between those two things outside of like the mind perceiving like the light that like bounces back and forth between objects in your eyes or whatever. I don't think that's right. Like that's not my model of reality, and so I think like it's interesting that if you go to Skinwalker Ranch, they'll say like they have this principal investigator on site, and he'll say, people with the biggest egos get like hit the hardest. And they tell this story of this Hell's Angels chieftain getting like paralyzed on the mesa. This is like a top Netflix show, by the way, about this little place. Getting paralyzed on the mesa, leaving, and then leaving, you know, he was fine after that, leaves, goes home, and then he's hospitalized like randomly for like 3 weeks or whatever after going. So it's similar to like a psychedelic trip, I think, where if like you come in with a lot of baggage, I think it can be really gnarly and hard. Like you're kind of excavating stuff from inside of you or something. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have like a perfect model for how any of this stuff works, but I do think.
I mean, I guess a skeptic point of view would be like a lot of coincidence, and there's enough of a mythology around that people psychosomatically like cause it for themselves, right?
Sure. Yeah, and then I would say like, okay, what is the psychosomatic? It's like when people say it's like a placebo. Like placebo is like this dirty word, but placebo is like extremely effective, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the idea that we can somehow detach like our beliefs, like we can be like perfectly rational, is like this total farce of like modern Silicon Valley thinking that I think is now like out of vogue in Silicon Valley, but like 10 years ago you would have had all these like, you know, effective altruist utilitarian groups that like we can debug our own mind. It's like, no, you can't. Like everybody's religious about something, you know. Everybody's like motivated by like totally irrational things. But
no, I think to me, I don't know about you personally, Joey, but to me, it's like I don't think I'm interested in this out of power. It's just straight up. I'm just curious what reality is.
I am
right.
Too,
It's just
man.
like, yo, what are we in a simulation? Are we playing just a game? Like, what is this stuff?
Me too. I'm sympathetic to the simulation thing. I don't know if you guys think about that at all.
We're in a simulation.
I think something like it, yeah. Like a low-level rendering of like a higher reality.
Have we talked to Stephen Wolfram?
No, I'm a fan of his work. I've never met him or talked to him do you know him?
I don't know him, but I think just a lot of his... I'm a computer science guy by background, so I think a lot of the computational model of how reality works, I'm sympathetic towards.
Oh, yeah.
Which then implies like, okay, if we're in like a computer...
Yeah. Well, look at like...
If we're in a Turing machine, then it's like, okay, like, why can't we just be in a simulation?
Totally. Look at Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? So like the more precise you get the position of an electron, the fuzzier the momentum, and vice versa. That sounds like computational caching to me. You can only store so much information about reality in local memory.
Or it's how you would program a video game. If no one's looking at it, you would cache it.
That's right.
And then we were looking at it. Okay, let's render it. Let's play it. Right?
I couldn't agree more.
So it feels like a video game. Like if I'm a coder and I'm programming this universe, I would cache things. If no one's looking, I save the state, have it kind of in a general description.
Yeah.
You view it, boom, let's render it.
Do you know what the Mandela effect is? So it's this idea that like a ton of people in South Africa remember Mandela dying in prison in the 80s. And they even remember it to such an extent where it's like they all remember him like being walked in a funeral procession with his wife by his side. Totally not true. He gets out of jail, I think, in the 90s.
I don't know what to make of it. Like, I don't know.
Gets out of jail in the... Well, it points to the local rendering thing.
Like dozens of people claim this.
Big group of people. Wow. Big group of people. So much so that it's the effect was named after him because it's actually a really popular effect where, like, there are versions of the past. I think my version of reality is, like, we have these, like, air pockets of social consensus around what happened. And, like, you have all these versions of the past where, like, large groups of people like completely misremember things.
Yeah.
And so that would point to the simulation theory as well. Because you'd have like different saved game states.
Yeah, like local time phenomenon, like local time streams.
Yes.
And we're all kind of sharing the same time, so we all remember this, but other people have like different little pockets of time.
Totally. Yeah. And who's to say it's unfalsifiable, right? Like we don't know what happened in the past. You can say like, I remember.
Yeah, we all just remember whatever.
We all remember. And there's this thing like in psychology, like state dependent memory or whatever. So like, I actually think a really interesting model for the past that would actually probably comport with like quantum electrodynamics and like Feynman's stuff is like the present is like constricted, and then you have probable futures and probable pasts.
Yeah.
And the present, it's like almost like you're like your mind is like a cursor, like moving across various timelines or something, and like rendering reality. And like that's like incomplete, and like I'm sure some like super great physicists could be like, that's bullshit.
I feel like we could talk about remote viewing, kind of this telepathy thing, but I want to almost just bring it back to like I think we're all like very curious and we're reasonably smart. If you're in government, in power, like this is like probably like the most interesting stuff that you could be thinking about, right? Like to me, it's like, I would just be doing this all day long if I was in the right job.
I remember when I was like a kid, I was like interested in being a political leader specifically, just so that I could like uncover, like I could know the truth.
Yeah.
Now as I got older, obviously my priorities in life changed.
Yeah.
I'm like not interested in that, but like.
Get ready.
But no, I just like I want to get in a position of power, like specifically because like I just want to know, like, are aliens fucking real?
Like, totally.
So what do you make of it? Just that like people are in their little bureaucratic government jobs, they're just like siloed?
I think so. I think there's been, I mean, it's like all the stuff like Peter Thiel talks about where it's like we are in this like stagnation. The idea of like this interdisciplinary polymath is like no longer like the archetype of like, like the tip of the spear as far as like science and like, people in government. And I think in the past you had all these people like looking at various disciplines, extremely interested in the nature of reality and like pushing the boundary, like doing border science. If you look at like 30s, 40s, and 50s, what Oppenheimer, Teller, all these people were doing is like really pushing the boundaries on like what is our reality. And at some point, I think it became extremely dangerous to the point where like it became like kind of like compartmentalized in various parts of the government. You have this kind of civilian, unelected, bureaucrat, state system or whatever. And I think there's just this like decay function on like the people like who have the state secrets or whatever. And
the best Americans just aren't playing in that game.
That's my take now is like,
but like if CIA is like, oh, Jesse is friggin' smart. Like why aren't you like in there? Or is it just like I sometimes wonder, this is our little territory. We don't want anyone else to know our little territory.
I sometimes wonder why they don't hit me up. I kind of, unless it's like to say like don't stop covering a thing. Like I kind of don't want them to because it's like you probably end up in some like desk job thing. Like I think it's just like lamer than it used to be or something. And I think a lot of people on the inside are like, we need this thing to be like reformed and like like revitalized.
My sense of what you're doing is that like. Yeah, you are very interdisciplinary, and you're a historian too. I think you're just like gluing together a lot of pockets in a very nice way. I think that's why your stuff is working.
I really appreciate
so it's like I don't think is like no one in government is as smart as you. They're threatened by you. They just don't care. Like
I think I'm too small for them to be threatened. I don't think they're threatened. I think there are a few people in government who are like this guy Carl Nell, who I just interviewed, is like extremely like 200 IQ, like just giga brain guy, and we hit it off. Like I love him. I think he likes me a lot too.
What's his job?
He set up Army Futures Command, so he ran tech modernization for the entire Army.
So is it 4-star general or he was?
No, not a 4-star general. He reported right up to General Milley, who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Yeah, former chairman. Yeah.
So, like super legit, kind of hardcore guy. He's worked at Lockheed,
so like
Northrop.
Senior Executive Service, SES level for like Pentagon. Like what? Like I'm just kind of curious. Like
he's commanded every level through brigade in the Army. He was actually stationed
as an officer and then became a civilian.
And then became a civilian because he was actually on the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Task Force with David Grush, tasked by the Director of National Intelligence to like look into UFOs. And he came out, same assessment as Grush. Like, this is very, very real. And, like, I think he's actually one of the best people when it comes to analyzing, like, theorizing what this stuff is. He's just, like, he's extremely smart. So there are a few people like that in government where I'm like, oh, like, that's my, like, tribe. Like, I love, he's, like, he's so smart. But it's rare, man. Like I think the government itself has sort of decayed a little bit, and it's this weird spot we're in.
So is he still working for the government, or is like ambiguous?
No, he's on the outside, and he's trying to push disclosure from the outside. So he's still helping with various initiatives, but like he's on the outside.
It's like who's just always in, like right, like what? That's like
the
deep
$64 million question.
Yeah. So like, but there's someone. That's you're in, you're not in, you retire.
Are you talking specifically about like you say, UFO programs, or are you talking about like government in general, or what do you
I
mean
think
exactly?
I think the UFO UAP stuff in specifically, right?
Yeah.
It's just like this guy seems very qualified, has like a very credentialed military background, but he's retired. So like who's the
Yeah.
guy deciding?
Yeah, it's really messed up because it's like we're in this nuclear multipolar world, and it's actually a matter of national security. Like, if you have reverse engineering programs, and China and Russia have reverse engineering programs, theirs are centralized and include their best and brightest scientists. And to my model, like my mental model of like how our system was set up, it was like the CIA, and then at the behest of the CIA, you had various academic outposts that like all kind of like their stuff got like sequestered and like classified in certain, at certain spots of like progress because it became like too dangerous for like outside exposure. And then you have like aerospace prime contractors, like, big five types, like kind of being like the cleaning crew as far as like the crash retrieval stuff, working on some maybe exotic propulsion or whatever. And the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand, and it's like a matter of, it's actually like, as much as I'm just in this for like ontological truth, like, the average STEM student not being led like sheep to slaughter into bad frameworks and like being inspired as far as personal meaning, just from a pure national security standpoint, if you look at that, you have Russia and China, and they have these centralized systems, and we have this like cargo cult that was set up from the 50s, where you have these corporate fiefdoms that are not like at all coordinating. It's absurd. We need to reform this like immediately. If you think about the first Manhattan Project, this is like I don't like talking about this stuff, but it's like maybe where the world is headed. So this is not like what I want to happen, but it's probably a consideration that like the government should think about, right? Like the first Manhattan Project was payload potency. So it was like building a bigger and bigger bomb. So it was like atom bomb into thermonuclear hydrogen bomb. And you even had like conversations between Oppenheimer and Teller. Who knows if these are like just fictionalized, but like I think they're pretty true accounts where Oppenheimer is like, hydrogen bomb is like too big for any target, right? So like you get to a certain cap on like destructiveness, and you're like, that's probably like as far as we can go. Like we live in this like pretty scary like world that could like blow up at any moment. And then you get into like, what's the next race after that? Well, you had like Curtis LeMay, like, really into like ICBM. Like first you had like the original bombers, then you have like ICBMs, then you have stealth bombers. So it's like payload delivery, from payload potency to payload delivery. So like it's like propulsion systems. Like, so if you have two Manhattan projects, like the first Manhattan Project, like, ended in, 1952 or whatever, when you had the Teller-Rulam, like maybe they're still working on things of that nature, but that's it for that. And now you have this other Manhattan Project, and I hate to frame it like that, but if I want to go to space, I want to like, go to another planet. Like I think that would be really cool. And if that's like a rallying cry to like get us to look into like more true science, and like be able to build like crafts that like go well beyond chemical combustion, then like, and like keep the US safe. Like I am extremely pro America, then like great. Like we should like call all of this out. But like, yeah, the local incentives of, I think, the legacy program don't line up with that.
So you think the power is diffused across private like prime contractors who have pockets of money,
Stodgy.
they're not unelected,
like old, yes.
and then there's like deep state government people that like your buddy Nell is like interacting with somehow, right? Like they're working together.
No, Nell was not in the program. He just looked at the program from the outside on the like this task force, and came to the conclusion that all this stuff is real. But yeah, I think it's this like the legacy program itself, I think, is this like cargo cult of like, my mental model is kind of like you have like the most important scientific frameworks and often maybe even exotic technology locked up in these old primes that don't get our best and brightest at all. And then you have Anduril, SpaceX, Palantir, like all these other companies that are like kind of eating their lunch and like with the best talent, but don't have the proper frameworks and don't have the access. So it's to me, that's like this, we got to solve that.
So you think it's like a military industrial complex, deep state, weird thing that we're stuck in.
Yeah.
And it's very local to America.
It's local to America.
Like I'm curious, like in terms of like, what do we know about, like, what are the Chinese doing? What are the Russians doing? Like, Do we have any idea?
In 2022, the Chinese talked about like some UAP tracking program, but I think the sense I get from talking to, you know, a couple people around the issue is that like they do know about this and that there is this sort of arms race, but like, I don't know a ton. Russia, one data point I have is there's a guy named George Knapp who's like a great UFO reporter, kind of old school guy. And he went to Russia in the 90s and he came back with all these documents, one of which said that Russia actually used to use nuclear material on rockets, I think like fake nuclear material, to bait UAPs because of the nuclear connection where they show up consistently around nukes. So they've definitely been aware of the issue for a while. And you had all these stories of like UFOs showing up around Chernobyl. The nuclear thing is the thing that I can get anybody to believe in UFOs like immediately when I talk about this, because you have this book called UFOs and Nukes by this guy Robert Hastings, and it's 170 employees at nuclear bases, so ICBM security personnel, radar operators, missileers, guys with their fingers on the button, where it's like you have to be the most sound mind. You have to report if you take ibuprofen. Like you are selected for your like clarity of mind, and they all say we've seen tic tacs, orbs, all sorts of stuff around the nuclear bases, shutting down the nuclear silos in many cases. And it's like you have to explain away that mass hysteria. Like that's crazy. There was even an article that came out in 2010 in the Atlantic. So it was like a well-covered thing at F.E. Warren nuclear base in Wyoming, that there was this outage for 24 hours on the base, and it was this massive national security issue. Yeah. And Hastings, this guy who wrote the book, back-channeled with a couple of missileers there, and they attribute the outage to this oblong tic-tac shaped object that was flying around at the thing. And so then this is the next step for like fully red pilling people is like, so you could say, right, that okay, maybe there's some like deep state U.S. cabal like tricking all the nuclear people. Yeah, like doesn't make any sense, but like okay, maybe that. Then you go to there's a town in Japan called Lino, which is right next to the Fukushima prefecture. It's famous for their civilian nuclear grid that they've had since the 70s. This town is dedicated to UFOs. It's dedicated. The Vice did a documentary on them in like 2020, 2021. They're all these like old Japanese dudes, and they're talking about UFOs. There's a museum dedicated to UFOs.
There are all these. Let's go.
I'm so down to go. Let's do it. Yeah, I'm super down. So that
after football season.
Yeah, after football season. So there's that. There's this big aerial school in Bariloche, Argentina. There was a pilot sighting. Really famous one in the 90s. That's right over there, civilian nuclear grid. There's this famous aerial school sighting in Zimbabwe where 60 school children at this international school all grew up. It's documented on Netflix. They all grew up, remembering to this day vividly this like craft landing and like a being walking out. It's right next to a uranium mine. Roswell itself is the site of the 509th Atomic Bomber Squadron, which is the first atomic bomber squadron in the U.S.
And the leading theory is that it's happening around the nuclear sites because these future beings that are future humans are just they're kind of checking in on things, coming back, like making sure that
that would be my extremely loosely held theory.
Yeah,
but like you have
leading
to
theory right now. I mean,
it's sad, man. I don't think there are a lot of the theorizing in this space and like the ability to even critically think in it is like super poor, to the point where like I'm not like I appreciate the kind words, Jeff. I don't think I'm like a genius, but I do feel like I'm like the tip of the spear on like thinking about some of this stuff. Me and a few other people. And it's like I only got into this like 3 or 4 years ago. It's like absurd. Like, and it's like to me, it's like so important.
Do you feel like you're having a flywheel? I'm actually curious because I feel like you're breaking a lot of these connections. Do people come to you with stuff now? Like, do you feel like you're getting momentum where you're just sucking down?
Yeah.
I'm sure people are trying to psyop you too now.
Yeah, maybe try to catch me with some stuff. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure I have talked about things that are not right. Yeah. You have to. You're like wading in like very speculative territory. Yeah. But I do think it's garnered a lot of respect that like I always say like I don't know, but like and they just present the facts, like which is what you have to do. I think there are a few people in the UFO space that like they just come in hot, being like UFOs are real, like it's real, and it feels like this like kind of snake oil salesy like pitch or whatever. Like I don't want
what do
you
you think
to
of like as a kid I watched Ancient Aliens or whatever.
Yeah,
that's like maybe one of the more mainstream examples of this.
Yeah, right? And it's like the sensationalist like sounds and stuff and the thing. And it's like I want you to critically think about reality, and if you think they're not real, like epic, like cool, I'm still friends with you. Like I don't care what you think. I just want you to. It's like you want to teach people that these things are like observables that other people think are real, and you should be skeptical and like look into them if you're interested. Like that's all I'm selling. I'm not even selling that. Like do whatever you want. Like we talked earlier, like I before meeting or when meeting anybody new, especially in like a business context or something, like I never mention UFOs until like if somebody's like, I saw a thing, or like, I'm like, oh, okay, let's go.
What's next? I mean, are there, like, you're constantly putting out content, doing your own research.
Yeah.
What are ideas that you're actively working on? Like, if you're going to manifest things to happen, like, what will those things be? How do you think this plays out? It sounds like there's like, to me, it feels like it's crossing some cultural threshold.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even political presidential candidates are talking about disclosing more and more content around this stuff.
I think it's going to build in momentum. I think it's snowballing, and
it's probably just like a boomer effect, right? All the people are going to die.
I think that.
Right? So they're just going to be like, we either are going to die with it or we're going to like hand it off to the next generation.
Totally. And the world heating up too, where in the Cold War era secrecy vibe was like keep everything kind of clamped down, right? And I think now things are heating back up, and it's like, yeah, but like our entire population, like our best and brightest aren't even aware of this ontological truth. Like that's actually really bad from like a national security standpoint.
100%.
And like as a Hail Mary, if we are gonna, if there's a possibility of like world destruction, and this could go in like a bad way or a good way, you could have this like religious revival around this stuff, because I think it substantiates past religion. I don't think it subverts it. Yep. And so like that's an exciting thing. And then maybe there's like a negative version of it where you get this like attempt at like a one world order or whatever. Like all these people have like, conspiracies about Project Bluebeam or whatever, these like, like a fake messianic thing where like vehicles that we've actually built show up and then like get us to, but like I've not seen too much evidence for that. And if that happened, I'd be like, as a person in the UFO spokespeople world, I'd be like, that's stupid. Like, I'd be like, don't follow that, So yeah, but like, I do think if you're in like high levels of government and you have a brain, you have to be thinking we're on the brink of all sorts of like possible bad stuff. If you're going to throw Hail Mary, you have to throw it now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I know. I want to be sensitive on time. Anything else you want? I know you have a stop.
Yeah, I have a stop in I think like 5 o'clock. I have a little bit more time, but
I was gonna say I want to make sure you don't miss your flight out too.
Yeah. Mine's at 7. Are we close?
You have any questions?
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like
it's like 15 minutes away.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
What other outside of aliens? Like you're touching upon. Like CIA remote viewing, JFK conspiracies, like
we haven't even talked about JFK.
Yeah, we talking about JFK. What do you guys want? You want JFK or what do you?
Yeah,
think?
I guess that's like more. It's like definitely off topic. I mean,
Yeah, JFK thing's fascinating. We were talking earlier, like, so there's this lawyer named Danny Sheehan. Danny Sheehan, do you guys know the movie Zelig by any chance? Or like a better one would be Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah.
Where he like shows up in like he's always behind the scenes in like every like big major like world event.
He's just standing there.
He's in the background.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Danny Sheehan is the American history version of Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
He was involved in the Pentagon Papers with Daniel Ellsberg. He was involved, with kind of overreach in Vietnam or whatever. He was involved in the Karen Silkwood case. He was involved in Iran-Contra. He was a defendant of James McCord, who was one of the Watergate burglars. He's literally like name your conspiracy in the last 50 years, and he like pops up. He's represented John Mack, who's the head of the Harvard Psychiatry Department, who studied alien abductions towards the latter half of his career. He represents Stephen Greer and Lou Elizondo, or has at times or whatever. These are, more recent UFO whistleblowers. So it's just like he's everywhere, this guy. And he's been going on like the podcast circuit. I think I was like the second podcast after Danny Jones to have him on. And like just fully piecing together like what happened with the JFK assassination in this way where I'm like, it's interesting to hear conversations around Trump possibly disclosing what happened with JFK, but I'm like, this guy knows, and he's kind of been saying it in public. And so, yeah,
like
okay,
naming names and like saying specifically what happened.
Names, dates, motives.
All right, so what actually happened?
And
predict.
I'll tell you exactly what happened. I'll tell you it's a high level, version of it. But okay, so Nixon was head of national security and vice president for Eisenhower, right? And he worked closely with Howard Hughes on like American national security. Howard Hughes was like primary aerospace contractor at the time. Oh. And basically there was this need to, the Cuban Revolution had happened. That was 59, I believe. Batista was out. You had Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, and the communists are in, right? So they create this like hardcore, basically Nixon and Hughes create this hardcore elite assassination unit of like 15 CIA operatives, many of whom came from like, actually they were Cuban exiles, and to reoperationalize them to go back and actually take out Castro and Che Guevara. Eisenhower leaves office and they don't end up kind of executing on this. And so this group is called the S-Force, right? These like trained assassins. The S-Force gets rolled up into a couple of other programs. Kennedy takes over. Kennedy and the third director of the CIA, Allen Dulles, getting into it, don't like each other. You have the Bay of Pigs, where Kennedy and Dulles like totally botched job. Kennedy gets extremely angry at the CIA for all sorts of overreach. And Kennedy famously says, I want to scatter the CIA to the winds, fires Dulles. Dulles goes to work at a firm called the Brown Brothers Harriman. The Brown Brothers Harriman is an investment firm from which the CIA actually initially formed. Yep. You have all the great Gilded Age families on the cap table of the Brown Brothers Harriman. So like Carnegie's, Rockefeller's, Mellons, like all these sorts of, the barons, right? And he's at the Brown Brothers Harriman, and he's kind of licking his wounds, like, I gotta go after JFK. And this is written about actually in a great book called Devil's Chessboard by David Talbot. And so he's like, I gotta get my revenge. And he re-operationalizes the S-Force, which had turned into this kind of like sleeper cell, like in these other covert operations, to take out JFK. And so you have this group of 15, trained killers, and they end up taking out JFK. Well, one of them is a guy named Roger Morales who takes the shot and takes out JFK, and Lee Harvey Oswald was kind of this patsy. And here's where things get even crazier, like where it's just like it like weaves together so much. So Nixon is then running against McGovern years later, and Nixon's like way ahead, like super popular, and he's like way ahead of McGovern. So there's this like question you have to ask yourself now, like why did he invade the DNC headquarters? Like there are all sorts of popular narratives, just like he was paranoid, but like why did he do that? It seems like complete self-sabotage, right? And so the subplot that has to do with the JFK assassination is, remember who set up the S-Force that took out JFK? It was Nixon. Yep. So Nixon didn't mean for JFK to get taken out by that was Dulles' thing. He wanted to set the thing up to take out Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. But he's thinking in his head, because he is actually a paranoid guy.
It's like, oh shit, they might know.
It would have been a death knell for him.
Yeah,
because they would have connected him.
They would have connected him, and but Kennedy was his biggest political enemy for years, right? So they would have blamed it on him.
It would have been an easy narrative for the left. Yeah.
Thing that gets even crazier is McGovern's campaign manager is a guy named Larry O'Brien. Larry O'Brien was Howard Hughes' longtime counsel, like his body guy, his like right hand guy. And so Nixon is thinking,
they might know.
This is their nuclear option. Yeah. This guy knows. He definitely knows. Okay. And he could let it out whenever he wants. And so whose phone did they bug in Watergate? It was Larry O'Brien's phone. And there's this question, why would you bug Larry O'Brien's phone? Because you wanted to know what he was talking about, because you were freaked out. That was the only kind of edge case scenario in which you lose when you're Nixon. You're way ahead in all the polls. So, and then there's all these weird things where James McCord, who was part of the Watergate scandal, I think 4 out of the 5 out of the 6 or something, like a high percentage of the Watergate burglars themselves were CIA. And James McCord, who was like the main guy, who actually Nancy Sheehan ended up representing, Allen Dulles has this famous quote where he goes, James McCord was my favorite guy. Like he was like his like right-hand guy. So it's like this crazy weaving together of narratives where between the JFK assassination, Nixon originally being the, VP under Eisenhower.
Ties a lot of loose threads together.
Ties a lot of loose threads together. And I wouldn't even believe it if it didn't. I was already bought into like the Oliver Stone narrative that like in the David Talbot, this book, like this narrative that like you had like deep state CIA forces that were like trying to take out JFK already. Like I was kind of bought into that.
Yeah.
And so it's really Danny Sheehan, this guy, filling in the gaps. Like to me, it's like, if you look at this stuff for like a day or two, I think you come to the conclusion that like they had it out for JFK.
Yeah.
And then this is really kind of.
So do you think that explains like off record conversations with people that are like senators in intelligence? They're like scared of CIA.
Yeah.
Like then it explains like, okay, like people have all these ideals going to government and then they're like read in. They're like,
yeah.
Like, do you believe that like guys in suits are like, hey, this is how the world works. Be careful.
I don't know.
Like, do you think it's like that is how it's done in DC?
It's such an interesting question, and it's one Rogan. I could tell Rogan was trying to get at it with Trump in this interview, where he was like, "Okay, but like, what happens? To you? Like, do you get sit down?" Because it's an interesting question, right? It's like maybe I always should have been more cynical about Obama, but like I grew up liberal, right? And like Obama was like the messiah to me, like originally. Yeah. Like when he was about to be elected in, 2008 or whatever, I was like, this guy is like so like well spoken and like like everything, we're gonna change everything. And like then he just like got elected and
he's
like
pretty conventional.
Beyond. He was just like a total extension of like neoconservatism. Like it was like, just like an extension of the surge plan in Iraq. It was, you're not going to close Guantanamo Bay, ramp up in Afghanistan, deport more immigrants than anybody. It was like everything was like, and now I've become much more conservative, to be honest. But like back then, I was like, you had this progressive guy who was like saying all the right things. And then I like look into the people he's hiring, and it's like Larry Summers and Michael Fromm. It's like all these guys who've just like been around forever and all the other administrations. And it is this like open question is like, do you just get sat down by some like 4-star general and they're just like, this is the way the world works. You don't really have as much power as you think. And like, you can operate within these bounds. You're kind of like this PR guy. And like, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
That'd be scary, right? Like you get elected, you think you're going to change the world. And then it's like, hey.
Yeah.
We have this giant file of all the weird shit you've done.
Yeah, you're not at the top of the org chart, and we can destroy you.
Do you think that, like, in your conversation, do you think that just like, I mean, we're all living in this like kind of surface level capitalistic society? Everyone's like living their lives, doing their job, and then
a bit, yeah. I mean,
they're just like this oligopoly of like
kinda
interests.
Kinda. Well, it's like look at the JFK stuff, right? It's like he was kind of iconoclastic.
Like I hear that, I'm like, I don't know.
That has to be still be going on.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. Totally. I mean, I don't know. Like, do you think that's a crazy narrative?
I mean,
I just feel like okay, like
I don't clearly haven't looked into this to the extent that you and others have, but like it seems plausible.
At first blush, it's like I don't know, like it sounds.
I think we live in a.
There's just so many smart people who are like skeptical of the official narrative that it just. Whenever there's a lot of smart people who are skeptical of something, I like try to pay attention.
Yeah.
And, now literally last week, you had the former president of the United States who, is very possibly going to be the president again, like publicly talking about this file that he's like a little bit nervous to share, but thinks he probably should and probably will.
Yeah.
Like where there's smoke, there's typically fire. Like it's.
What's Occam's razor explanation to that, right? It's like if it were some like foreign adversary taking out JFK, you'd reveal it immediately.
100%.
Like,
or
like
if it were the official narrative that we've been taught in history class, like what is
but
Trump
and Rogan
even talking about?
But if it really was that, like you can't release it, no?
Well,
like okay, you say that we had the power to release it, and we know that basically.
I think they might
CIA
now.
deep coup.
They might now because
like we learned from that. It's not going to happen again.
Well,
there's this debate. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say like most of the people are probably dead. Although it sounds like some of them.
You have a couple of them who I think are alive.
But like,
I don't even want to necessarily say that.
Yeah.
But it's
because if you're in power, you probably don't want that released because then you basically harm the trust in your institution.
Well, it's this interesting question with Trump. It's like how far does the guy go? You have Elon talking about like massive cuts in the bureaucracy. Like that's talk about the antibodies you produce and saying stuff like that. You have RFK Jr. publicly aligned with him, who comes from the lineage of the Kennedy reform stuff. And then you have Trump himself, who like the first time around hired all these guys. He talked about John Bolton was one example he used like on Rogan, that he kind of, it was really funny. He was like,
I show up with Bolton
he's my
and,
crazy guy.
He's like an idiot, but like they know I like mean business.
Yeah, but he's a little
like
scary.
This guy's ready to like fucking try.
Yeah, like he's like, I used him kind of to scare them. Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's my attack dog.
Yeah. So it's like, does Trump 2.0 fall back into the same cycle? Like, I think it's very valid to be cynical that like, you just hire all the same people, or he's getting old, and like, the first time around he felt so screwed and so hamstrung that maybe he kind of just goes off and like does his thing and like hires whoever he wants to hire, and I don't know, we'll see.
Well, I hope you get read in, and you can tell me what happens and how the world works.
I'm down to be part of the the UFO reform guy. I'm down. That sounds great. If I could like help get this stuff out to the public, it would be absolutely amazing. But I don't know. I think it depends on, you need to be like super forward minded on it, and there are a lot of possible paths. And there's a path where like we muddle along for a while, and like, or maybe it inflects downwards. I think like you always have to be aware of that. So, but I agree with you. I think it's growing. And,
I mean, to me, it's like, it's fundamentally human. I think we're all super curious. We're children. We just want to know how the world works. I think we like, reality just smacks us down into like these very contained good little boys and girls.
Totally.
And I think it's like, we're gonna revert back to like, hey, we just want to know. I'm just curious. I don't think we're here to push any agenda. It's like, how does world work? Exactly. What is reality?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And like, it's like the nuclear stuff, like nuclear trade secrets are secret, but like nuclear physics is studied at every elite university. Like the idea that we don't, like reality itself should be not disclosed to us, and science should be like not open source, that's crazy. All
right. We're going to have, after all the election stuff goes by and hopefully we learn a little bit more, we're going to have you back on to unpack.
Hell yeah. I'm pumped. We should talk about Better too, or is there something?
Better Picks.
I mean, just download Better Picks.
Download Better Picks. Maybe we'll get some like incrementally new audience with this app, because it's this got to be like kind of one of the weirder episodes. That
Dude, it's the best one.
I mean, definitely maybe an incremental audience is tuning in.
I love it. That was Jake's take after we recorded too. He's like, dude, like this.
You guys didn't go deep enough.
Yeah, we could have gone a little. Yeah.
No, you guys.
Yeah, we could have gone a little. Yeah, next one. Yeah, I know he's super into it. He
didn't go deep enough.
Yeah, but he's like so intuitive. I feel like it's so funny. Like you talking about him manifesting. It's like you can know a lot of this stuff intellectually, and then I'm like,
we gotta
maybe
let him
Jake's
tell
just
his
like
own
an
stories.
alien. Like Jake's like I don't know how his life is like so amazing. It's like so great.
All right, we're gonna have him on to tell his alien stories.
He's got a lot.
He's got his own stories.
He's got a lot.
Next episode.
All right. Thanks,
guys.